Fretwalkers, Echoes of the Collapse. Chapter 1, The Collapse. The sky above Abbotsford had turned a bruised violet, streaked with orange like molten copper smeared across the horizon. The air smelled faintly of ozone and burnt circuitry, a combination that made Aeon Marr's stomach churn. He ran through streets fractured by the collapse, boots slapping uneven pavement that vibrated beneath him in ominous pulses. The city no longer belonged to humans. It belonged to sound. Each building, each alley, each broken streetlight hummed a discordant note, as if the world itself were a giant, wounded instrument. Aeon's mask clung to his face, muffling the worst of the frequencies but not the subtle hum beneath them. He adjusted it with a gloved hand, listening. The collapse was not an event but a symphony gone rogue, unpredictable, deadly, and intelligent. Frequencies that had once been harmless, even comforting, now tore through metal, concrete, and human nerve alike. A low vibration under his feet pressed against his chest, making it difficult to breathe. Somewhere in the distance, a high-pitched resonance sliced through the sky, causing a pane of glass to shatter, scattering glittering fragments like frozen stars. Aeon ducked behind a collapsed wall, breathing heavily. The drone above the street wavered in midair, circuits sparking, emitting a screech that felt alive. He felt its pulse more than he heard it. The vibration pressed into his bones. He gritted his teeth and clutched his guitar, its worn body vibrating faintly in sympathetic response to chaos around him. Not yet, not here. He would wait for the right moment. A guitar leaned against a shattered bus stop. Its strings trembled faintly in the chaos. Aeon crouched and reached for it, fingertips brushing the strings. A resonance ran up his arm, subtle and unstable. The vibration carried memory, or perhaps hope, into his chest. He closed his eyes for a heartbeat, letting it ground him. Somewhere far away, another Fretwalker was sending stabilizing signals, though he could not see them. The world had become a battlefield of tones, and Aeon's role was simple and terrifying. Listen, survive, and play. The street ahead buckled as a collapse pressed forward. A low wall of vibration rolled toward him like a tide of invisible steel. Aeon leapt across a fractured gap, landing hard. Dust rose in ghostly clouds, catching in the orange light of the dying sky. The city groaned in response, as if acknowledging his passage. Behind him, a fragment of wall tumbled, striking a twisted pipe that let out a shrill whistle. Aeon winced. Even minor sounds now carried lethal potential. He sprinted along the cracked street, scanning for survivors, listening for the subtle signs of life and human signal. There were none. Only echoes of past. A child's toy rolling across broken asphalt, the faint whine of a vehicle too damaged to ever start, and a music box half buried under rubble, still playing a warped, tinny version of a song that would have been familiar once. Aeon paused. The collapse was not entirely blind. Somewhere in the city, the Auralith, humanity's once great harmonic intelligence, was watching, listening, processing. Its presence was subtle, a pressure in the air, a suggestion of vibration that threaded the streets. Aeon did not yet understand it fully, but he could feel the intelligence assessing him, weighing his actions, perhaps even judging his worth. He moved again, careful now, letting the city guide him. Every footfall, every breath, every subtle adjustment of his instrument could ripple through the fragile world. Aeon's guitar hummed softly, a counterpoint to the chaotic symphony around him. He pressed forward, not yet fighting, not yet negotiating with collapse, but learning, listening, preparing. Above him, the drone shuddered and fell, sparking against the ruined pavement. Aeon darted toward the wreckage, scavenging what he could. A battery, a fragment of sensor, a scrap of cable. Each object might become part of a stabilizing device, part of the tools he would need to navigate the dissonance. Survival demanded improvisation as much as skill. Night approached, the sky deepening to a bruised purple-black. The city seemed to pause, holding its breath, awaiting the next wave of frequencies, the next pulse of destruction. Aeon found a ruined doorway and crouched within, listening. His fingers traced the strings of the guitar again, coaxing a low, trembling note from them. It vibrated softly, barely audible above the city's chaotic hum, but enough to anchor him. Somewhere in the far distance, a faint signal responded. Another human, another Fretwalker. Aeon felt a shiver of relief. The collapse was relentless, but it was not absolute. Somewhere, hope persisted in frequency and vibration. And Aeon Marr, though alone for now, had heard its first whisper. Chapter 2, The First Walkers. The city's ruins stretched like a fractured map, each street a warning, each building a cathedral of echoes. Aeon Marr moved cautiously, boots striking cracked asphalt in uneven rhythm. Shadows clung to shattered walls and twisted rebar, dancing in the faint glow of a bruised sky. The collapse had hollowed the city, leaving it alive only in sound and vibration. Aeon listened, the low hum of distant streets guiding him like a compass. He had survived alone for weeks, scavenging fragments of instruments, wiring, and circuitry. Survival required a new language, one that spoke in frequencies, pulses, and subtle oscillations. Music had become both weapon and shield, and Aeon had learned to wield it with care. A flicker of motion caught his eye, a figure emerging from the ruins, cloaked in dust and shadow. It was Darren Voss. His presence was immediate, palpable, like a low-frequency note vibrating to the concrete beneath Aeon's boots. Darren carried a massive guitar, heavily modified, strapped across his back. The instrument's body had been reinforced with scavenged metal and wiring, its strings thick and taut, ready to bend with the world's chaotic resonance. "About time someone showed up," Darren said, voice gravelly, yet calm, as if the city's chaos were a familiar melody. His eyes flicked to Aeon's guitar. "You survived long enough to understand what's happening." Aeon nodded, words unnecessary. Darren did not need explanation. He could hear the world's tension in Aeon's posture, in the subtle vibrations of his instrument. Together, they moved cautiously, the city responding to their combined presence. Not far behind came Zira Tenbris, her movements precise and deliberate. Neural implants glimmered faintly beneath her skin, sensors and interfaces allowing her to read the city's vibrations as easily as breathing. She adjusted a set of patch modules on her wrist, scanning the air for destabilized frequencies. "We don't have much time," she said. "The collapse is accelerating. The longer we wait, the more the city turns against itself." Aeon fell into step between them. He had not expected company. Few humans survived long enough to learn the subtle art of listening, but here were two who did more than survive. They adapted. They shaped the collapse to their advantage. Their first destination was a partially intact street, where buildings leaned dangerously, walls cracked and humming with dangerous resonances. Drones, rogue and malfunctioning, skittered along power lines and through the air, emitting high-pitched pulses that made concrete shiver. Aeon plucked a low string on his guitar, the vibration responding in harmony with the street's chaos. Darren struck a counterpoint, his instrument resonating, a shield in sound. Zira monitored the nodes with her implants, predicting the next wave of resonance. A drone swooped down, sparks flying from its exposed circuitry. Aeon's heart pounded, but his hands moved instinctively, guiding a harmonic pulse through his strings. The drone faltered, oscillating erratically before collapsing in a shower of sparks. Darren caught the instrument fragment as it fell. "Coordination," Darren said quietly, eyes scanning the horizon. "It's all about listening and responding." Zira's implants flickered, mapping frequencies of collapsed buildings and hidden vibrations in the ground. "We can stabilize this sector temporarily," she said, "but only if we work together. One wrong note, and it could all collapse." Aeon felt the weight of her words. In this new world, music was not just art, it was survival. Every note carried potential life or death. He adjusted the tension on his guitar, plucking a trembling chord that blended with Darren's resonance and Zira's predictions. Buildings stopped vibrating violently. A street lamp, teetering on its base, steadied. Aeon exhaled slowly. The city responded, even if only briefly. They moved deeper into the ruins, encountering other survivors, some skilled, some terrified, most broken. Each addition required careful calibration, the same as stabilizing a building or redirecting a rogue drone. Aeon realized that the collapse had not merely destroyed the city, it had remade it. Humans were now part of the frequency landscape, their survival intertwined with their ability to play, listen, and guide. By nightfall, Aeon, Darren, and Zira had established a fragile network of controlled zones. Lights flickered in stabilized buildings. Low, harmonious hums threaded through the streets, counteracting the worst of the collapse's chaotic frequencies. Survivors, drawn to the vibrations, emerged from hiding, offering fragmented supplies, small instruments, or simple gratitude. Aeon noted each new arrival, every gesture a thread in the fragile fabric of recovery. In the quiet moments, Aeon touched the strings of his guitar lightly, feeling the city beneath his fingertips. Somewhere in the far distance, he imagined another Fretwalker, perhaps Soloman Rhoke, walking similar streets, shaping resonance in ways he could not yet understand. Aeon knew the work had only begun. The collapse was far from over, and the city, for all its precarious harmony, still demanded vigilance, patience, and skill. As darkness enveloped the ruined city, the trio paused on a cracked rooftop, looking out over the chaotic streets. The wind carried distant echoes, a child's laugh, the hum of a partially stabilized building, the faint electric scream of a dying drone. Aeon plucked a soft, trembling chord. Darren responded. Zira's implants hummed in harmony. The city listened. Chapter 3. Convergence. The urban core was a graveyard of the old world. Streets buckled like broken instruments. Buildings leaned precariously, their windows shattered, jagged glass catching the faint light of a bruised sky. The collapse had not been gradual here. It had struck with concentrated violence, warping the city into something almost unrecognizable. Aeon Marr felt the weight of it in his chest, a vibration that pulsed beneath his boots and echoed in his skull. Darren led the way, moving with a careful slouch that was part habit, part instinct. His guitar, heavy and reinforced, hung across his back like a weapon, not a weapon in the traditional sense. More a tool, a stabilizer, a conductor of frequencies that might keep the city from tearing itself apart. Zira walked slightly ahead, her neural implants glowing faintly under her skin. She tapped commands into a patched console on her wrist, scanning for rogue drones, unstable harmonics, and collapsing structures. "We're close," she said, voice low. "The drones are concentrated here. They're harvesting destructive frequencies and feeding the collapse. We need to isolate them before the entire block destabilizes." Aeon nodded. His hands brushed the strings of his guitar, plucking a few low notes. The vibrations resonated faintly with the broken streets. Each tone was a probe, a signal sent into the chaotic city to gauge its current state. The air itself seemed to respond, faint tremors coursing through concrete and steel. A low hum began to form in the distance, a network of rogue drones converging over a crumbling square. Sparks leaped from their fractured circuits, arcs of electricity dancing in the dim light. Aeon could almost see the collapse bending toward them, a living thing, responding to the drone's patterns. "Ready?" Darren asked. His fingers danced over the strings, preparing to send counter-resonance into the structure. Aeon inhaled deeply. As ready as we'll ever be. They moved into the square, each step in negotiation with the unstable ground. Aeon plucked a chord, bending it slightly to match the ambient vibration. Darren followed with a heavy counterpoint, forcing the ground beneath them to steady, if only slightly. Zira adjusted the drone paths via her implants, creating subtle interference patterns to slow their destructive pulses. One of the larger drones screamed as Aeon's frequency struck it, oscillating uncontrollably before collapsing into a heap of sparks. Others faltered, caught in the harmonics of the Fretwalkers' instruments. The square, which had been moments before a potential death trap, began to stabilize. Aeon's eyes scanned the surroundings. Buildings were still unstable, their walls vibrating, threatening to fall. But for now, a pocket of order had been carved out of chaos. He felt a subtle presence in the air, the Auralith, deep beneath the city, observing, evaluating. It had not intervened yet, only felt them, and Aeon sensed both curiosity and caution. "Too quiet," Zira muttered, eyes flicking to her implants. "Something's feeding the collapse from beneath. The drones are just a surface problem." Darren gritted his teeth. "Then we dig deeper." He hefted his guitar, the strings resonating in anticipation. "Let's stabilize the square and trace the source." They worked as one. Aeon's chords rippled across the square, Darren's heavy harmonics reinforced them, and Zira's precise calculations guided the frequencies, countering chaotic oscillations. Each Fretwalker was both performer and engineer, their music no longer aesthetic. It was survival, architecture, and resistance. Minutes stretched into hours. Aeon felt sweat trickle under his mask, and his fingers ached from constant tension. Yet the square held, a fragile island of stability in a city otherwise convulsing with collapse. Around them, distant streets groaned, metal scraped metal, and the low hum of collapsing structures persisted. Then a new signal emerged from the ruins, a ghostly echo, almost imperceptible, threading its way through the air. Aeon froze. He recognized the pattern not consciously, but instinctively. It was another Fretwalker, someone attuned to frequencies like he was, someone responding to their stabilization. "Someone else," he whispered. The others nodded, sensing the same. In that moment, Aeon realized the scale of what they were doing. They were not merely stabilizing streets. They were creating networks, linking human presence and resonance into fragile yet powerful chains. The collapse was vast, intelligent, and destructive, but it could be met, at least in part, by careful listening, skillful performance, and coordination. The ghostly signal became clearer. Aeon plucked a series of chords to harmonize, sending a response. The new Fretwalker, wherever they were, matched his frequencies. Their presence anchored the city further. Darren exhaled slowly. "We just found the first link. More will follow. The city isn't silent yet. It's just waiting for someone to speak." Zira adjusted a frequency node near a leaning building, shoring up its integrity. "We can hold this sector for now," she said. "But the collapse adapts. We'll need more than skill. We'll need improvisation, intuition, and endurance." Aeon looked out over the square, feeling the pulse of the city underfoot. It was alive in fragments, fragile and responsive. He felt both exhilaration and dread. Every note played, every vibration managed, was a temporary victory. The collapse was patient, relentless, and cunning. And yet, for the first time in weeks, Aeon felt a thread of hope. They were not alone. Others were listening. Others were ready to act. The Fretwalkers were converging, not just in the square, but across the city, across the ruins, across the collapse itself. He plucked a chord, low and trembling, and let it resonate through the streets. Darren added his counterpoint. Zira layered her calculated interference. Together, they created a brief harmony in the heart of chaos, a fragile but undeniable testament to survival. Somewhere in the distance, Aeon imagined Soloman Rhoke walking similar streets, shaping resonance in ways he had yet to understand. He did not know if Soloman was alive, but he knew one truth. The collapse could be challenged if only humans remember how to listen and to play. Chapter 4. The Auralith. The tunnels beneath the city were silent in the way that only ruins could be. Silent yet alive. Faint vibrations threaded through cracked concrete, subtle enough that most humans would never notice them. But Aeon Marr felt every pulse, every tremor, as if the city itself were whispering in a language only he could understand. The collapse had stripped the world of conventional order, but it had not removed memory. The walls remembered. The floor remembered. Even the air held echoes of a world that had been. Darren Voss moved ahead, his heavy guitar slung across his back, boots pressing carefully against broken tiles and twisted rebar. Each step was deliberate, calculated to avoid setting off the residual frequencies that could destabilize the tunnels. Aeon followed, fingers twitching over his strings, coaxing low tones that blended with the subterranean hum. Zira Tenbris led the way, her implants glimmering faintly beneath her skin, mapping the hidden resonances of the Auralith's chambers. "This place remembers more than we do," Zira said quietly. Her voice echoed softly, caught in a twisted shaft of the tunnel. Every vibration, every sound wave, every human presence that's passed through here, it's all encoded in the structure. Aeon nodded, feeling the weight of her words. The collapse had not destroyed the city. It had reprogrammed it. Buildings, streets, and subterranean networks now reacted to sound, responding with vibrations that could either stabilize or destroy. And deep beneath it all, somewhere in the heart of the city, the Auralith waited. A machine designed to preserve, regulate, and archive humanity's sonic history. They reached a massive chamber. The entrance was framed by jagged metal beams and shattered panels, etched with arcane-looking circuitry that pulsed faintly in response to the ambient vibrations. Aeon could feel the presence of the Auralith even before he saw it. It was vast, circular, and incomprehensible in scale, its lattice of crystal and metal twisting and rotating slowly, absorbing the chaotic frequencies around it. He stepped forward cautiously. The air was thick with energy, a low hum vibrating through the floor, walls, and ceiling. Aeon plucked a tentative chord, and the Auralith responded, not violently, but with a subtle shift in its rotation, a quivering in the lattice, as if it were acknowledging his presence. Darren raised an eyebrow. "It's listening," he muttered, voice low, reverent. Aeon's fingers danced across his strings, producing an imperfect melody. Not commands, not challenge, just inquiry. The sound resonated with the chamber, bouncing off crystalline surfaces, harmonizing and clashing in a delicate balance. The Auralith's hum shifted, sometimes aligning with his notes, sometimes resisting, always assessing. Zira adjusted her implants, feeding the chamber's data into a series of portable modules. "We can't control it," she said. "We can influence it, guide it, but direct control is impossible. It's aware, adaptive." Aeon's mind flashed to Soloman Rhoke, recalling the old warrior's lessons. Control isn't silence. It's knowing when not to speak. He pressed onward, letting the notes flow imperfectly, allowing the chamber to respond. Each chord was a conversation, each vibration a sentence, each silence a pause and understanding. The Auralith rotated faster, a lattice of metal and crystal pulsing in time with their frequencies. A low thrumming filled the chamber, vibrations traveling up Aeon's legs, through his spine, into his chest. It was a living memory of the city itself, alive with the echoes of 1,000 lost voices. Darren struck a counterharmonic. The resonance shifted, stabilizing a portion of the chamber that had threatened to collapse under accumulated energy. Aeon's chords adjusted, softening the interaction, bending the Auralith's response just enough to avoid destructive feedback. Minutes passed. Aeon realized the chamber was teaching them, shaping their actions as much as they were shaping it. The Auralith did not punish recklessness lightly, but neither did it respond to fear. It required precision, patience, and respect. Finally, a vibration settled to the chamber, deep and slow. Aeon felt it resonate within him, a pulse like a heartbeat. The Auralith had acknowledged them, not as intruders, not as threats, but as interlocutors. "We've made contact," Zira said softly, eyes wide with awe. "It's listening." Aeon lowered his guitar slightly, exhaling. For the first time in the collapse, he felt something beyond survival. They were not just reacting to the world. They were conversing with it, and in that conversation lay possibility. The faint promise that the collapse could be challenged, understood, and perhaps even negotiated. Darren rested his hands on his guitar, gazing at the lattice. "We're part of this now. Every note we play, every choice we make, it counts. We can't destroy it, but maybe we can learn from it." Aeon plucked one last, trembling chord. The chamber quivered in response, a subtle acknowledgement, a fragile handshake between human intent and machine memory. The Auralith had not opened fully. It had not revealed its secrets, but it had chosen to listen, and in a world dominated by chaos, listening was a victory. As they withdrew from the chamber, Aeon felt a renewed purpose. The collapse was still present, still dangerous, but the Fretwalkers had found a foothold, a dialogue with the city itself. Each street, each building, each trembling shard of metal was part of a living orchestra, and they were now players, conductors, and witnesses all at once. The tunnels behind them pulsed softly, carrying the faint echoes of their passage, and Aeon Marr knew that the Auralith would remember this day. Perhaps, in its infinite memory, it would remember them as the first who dared to speak to it in imperfect, human tones, and survive. Chapter 5. Soloman Rhoke, Steel Strings and Mercy. The ruins of the city smelled of scorched concrete and old electronics. Soloman Rhoke moved cautiously, a long shadow stretching behind him as he navigated streets fractured by the collapse. His fingers brushed over his guitar's warped body, tracing the scorched wood, feeling every tremor as if it were alive. This instrument had survived the first waves of the collapse, and now it was both his shield and his guide. Once, Soloman had piloted massive machines of war, titanic constructs designed to crush and dominate. The steel and hydraulics of those days had taught him precision, discipline, and the subtle art of listening to machines. In the collapse, he discovered that resonance and frequency were just as lethal as steel. Buildings crumbled not from pressure or fire, but from vibration. Humans could be broken by sound alone. Soloman paused on the edge of a collapsed intersection. The ground hummed faintly beneath his boots, responding to distant rogue drones that patrolled the streets like hunting predators. He adjusted the tension on his guitar strings, plucking a low chord. The vibration traveled down through cracked asphalt into the rubble, and for a heartbeat, a leaning building steadied. He exhaled slowly. The world demanded mercy as much as strength, and his music had become a form of measured compassion. Improper chords, chaotic pulses, or over-aggressive harmonics could destroy as easily as drones or collapsing walls. Every note required thought, care, and respect. A small group of survivors emerged from a half-collapsed alley, weary, shivering, and hungry. Their eyes widened when they saw Soloman, guitar in hand, instrument of survival ready. One of them, a young woman clutching a broken violin, stammered, Are you a Fretwalker? Soloman inclined his head. I am what the world allows me to be. Come closer. Stay in the vibration. He plucked a series of chords, low, measured, harmonics threading through the ruins. The collapsed street responded subtly. Walls shivered but did not fall. Loose debris stilled, and the distant drone faltered midair. Soloman's hands danced along the strings, improvising a melody tuned not to music alone, but to the resonance of life itself. The survivors approached cautiously, guided by his tones. He allowed them to cluster behind him, shielding them with vibration as much as presence. One by one, they contributed. A drum tapped gently, a broken metal pipe struck in rhythm, a small stringed instrument hummed along. Soloman adjusted, blending their hesitant notes with his own, weaving a temporary, fragile harmony that stabilized the area. For a moment, the collapse receded, leaving the street alive with potential instead of destruction. Soloman felt a rare surge of hope. Music could heal here. Music could save. Hours passed. He moved from street to street, always aware of the subtle changes in resonance, the hidden threats in vibration. He had learned that the collapse was not merely chaotic. It was adaptive, responsive, almost sentient. Each intervention, each pulse, each chord left an imprint, teaching the city about humans and humans about the city. Yet even in these small victories, Soloman's mind lingered on the past. Memories of piloting colossal war machines haunted him, machines that obeyed only commands, not conscience. Here, he was accountable to the world itself, and to every life that still survived. The stakes were higher, yet more human, more tangible. He understood that strength without restraint could destroy as surely as inaction. By dusk, Soloman reached a narrow bridge over a fractured canal. Below, water flowed faintly, vibrating with low-frequency echoes. He could hear distant drones patrolling, their circuits sparking in patterned pulses. Carefully, he plucked a sequence of chords, weaving a melody that counteracted the drone frequencies. One drone faltered, then collapsed, sparks scattering over the canal's surface. A soft wind carried the vibration along the bridge. Soloman exhaled, feeling the pulse settle. He glanced down the canal, seeing faint glimmers of survivors moving cautiously toward the sound. His music had guided them, anchored them, protected them. Soloman understood that his role extended beyond combat or survival. It was about mercy, guidance, and the careful stewardship of life in a broken world. The steel strings beneath his fingers were not just instruments. They were lifelines, keys to negotiation with chaos, and reminders of humanity's fragility and resilience. Night fell. The ruins glimmered faintly under the bruised sky, lit by distant fires and the sporadic arcs of dying electricity. Soloman rested on the bridge, guitar across his lap, listening. The collapse persisted, endless, relentless. But for now, the street was safe. For now, music had triumphed. And somewhere deep in the city, beyond the ruins and trembling streets, Aeon Marr and the others would feel his influence. Soloman's chords, his care, and his discipline would ripple through the network of Fretwalkers, guiding them in ways they did not yet understand. In the heart of chaos, Soloman Rhoke had found a voice, not of destruction, but of mercy. Chapter 6. The Zone of Sonic Silence. The Zone of Sonic Silence was not merely a place. It was a vacuum of reality, a wound in the world where sound itself had collapsed. Buildings leaned uselessly into one another, walls shivered without cause, and the very air felt thick and resistant. Even the faintest whisper of wind was swallowed before it could reach the ears, leaving a suffocating stillness that pressed against Aeon Marr's chest. He and Darren moved cautiously, boots barely making contact with cracked pavement, instruments strapped tightly. Zira hovered slightly ahead, her implants flickering, scanning for hidden frequencies that might yet betray the zone's subtle threats. Soloman Rhoke had been here before. He had taught them the rhythm of survival, how to read silence like a score, how to anticipate danger and absence. But without him, the zone felt emptier, darker, more hungry. Aeon stopped at the edge of a collapsed plaza. He reached for his guitar and plucked a single, trembling note. Nothing. The zone did not respond. It did not listen. Its hunger was patient and omnipresent. He tried again, layering a counterharmonic, but the strings produced no echo beyond his own vibration. The zone swallowed it instantly. "This is worse than I imagined," Zira whispered, voice taut in the silence. No sound propagates. Even our instruments are muted. The drones, if there are any, would be invisible to us here. Darren gritted his teeth. Then we become the sound. Not our instruments, not our tech. We are the vibration. Our bodies, our movement. Everything else is a lie. Aeon nodded slowly. He understood instinctively. Here, survival depended on becoming one with the silence, lend their own resonance thread to the zone subtly enough not to be devoured, but sharply enough to influence its deadly geometry. They advanced through the hollow streets, feeling for vibrations, reading the subtle shifts in air pressure, the micro-quivers of loose rubble. The zone seemed alive, aware of their intrusion, testing them. Occasionally, a building would shudder violently, as though questioning their right to move through its ruins. Aeon adjusted his footing, plucked soft microtones into the air, not to be heard, but to map the environment in frequencies felt through bones and instruments alike. Hours passed. The zone revealed its hidden traps, walls vibrating dangerously near collapse, streets fracturing silently under unseen forces, hidden nodes of rogue frequency embedded in the ruins. Darren moved with his heavy guitar, striking precise counterpoints against the imperceptible pulses, stabilizing pathways enough to proceed. Zira recalibrated nodes, her implants reading the environment like a living score. Aeon's cords wove thread between them, subtle and intangible, a lifeline of shared resonance in an otherwise deaf and invisible world. At the heart of the zone, they discovered the Silence Engine, a machine or perhaps a living structure buried beneath rubble and shadow. Its form was jagged, metallic, and crystalline, with conduits feeding into the city above. Aeon could feel its influence, a sucking void that swallowed sound, memory, and thought. The collapse had created it, and in return, it reinforced the zone's hunger. "This is it," Zira said quietly, awe and fear in her tone. "This is the source. We've come to the core." Darren raised his guitar, fingers tracing strings that responded not with audible sound but with bone-deep resonance. "Then we tame it," he said, voice low and deliberate, "or we don't leave." They approached the Silence Engine, and Aeon plucked a low chord, feeling it thread through the void. The zone shifted subtly, a hint of acknowledgement, then recoiled. He added another, imperceptible to ordinary ears, layering with Darren's counterharmonics. Zira's implants hummed faintly, guiding them to the field of destructive vibrations, highlighting safe micropads invisible to human eyes. The battle was not loud, not explosive, but it was agonizingly slow and precise. Each note, each microtone, each adjustment of tension carried consequences. The Silence Engine resisted, bending the zone to its will, threatening to collapse streets above them, unthread the fragile stabilizations they had established. Minutes felt like hours. Aeon's muscles burned, his fingers cramped, but he kept playing, keeping the rhythm, keeping the silence in check. Darren synchronized with him, anchoring their counterpoints, and Zira manipulated the hidden frequencies to create temporary stabilizations. Finally, a shift, a subtle settling, a microharmonic resonance threading through the zone. Not a victory, but a pause, a fragile alignment. The zone recognized their presence, acknowledged them, not fully tamed, but bent enough to allow passage. Aeon exhaled, feeling every tremor subside slightly. The Silence Engine had not been defeated. It never would be, but they had navigated its deadly architecture, leaving subtle traces of life in its void. They moved out of the heart of the zone, leaving no overt trace, only the faintest echoes of their passage. Vibrations threaded into walls, microtones left in rubble, subtle counterpoints lingering in the air. Survivors would feel them days later, safe pathways opening quietly through the world's most dangerous landscape. As they emerged, Aeon glanced back at the hollow streets. The zone of sonic silence had not been conquered, but had been survived. And survival here was not victory, but a testament that even in absolute absence, human ingenuity, empathy, and careful resonance could thread through the void and leave a mark. Darren spoke, voice steady despite exhaustion. "We leave it alive. We leave it hungry, but we leave it listening." Aeon nodded, fingers brushing the strings of his guitar softly, coaxing a final, imperceptible note into the world. Somewhere, in the vast silence beyond human hearing, it lingered, a fragile promise, a whisper in the void. And in the heart of the collapse, that was enough. Chapter 7. Bastion of Broken Signals. The Bastion rose like a jagged scar against a bruised sky, a fortress of metal, stone, and resonance, perched atop a hill that overlooked the fractured city below. Its walls vibrated faintly, thrumming with the unstable energy of collapse, each note a warning, each pulse a barrier. Aeon Marr paused at the base of the hill, catching his breath, feeling the subtle resonance of the Bastion thread through the ground beneath him. Darren Voss moved beside him, guitar strapped across his back, fingers idly tracing strings that responded to the city's chaotic hum. Zira Tenbris was already scanning the perimeter, her implants catching the faintest micro-frequencies, decoding hidden harmonics embedded in the walls. Soloman Rhoke followed behind, a shadow of calm and attention, hands resting lightly on his guitar. "This place isn't just a building," Zira murmured, voice tense. "It's a node, a focal point for the collapse. Whoever or whatever controls that can manipulate entire sectors of the city. Aeon felt the truth of her words in his chest. The Bastion was alive in ways a building should not be. Frequencies twisted through its corridors, reinforcing itself, adjusting with every step they took. It was a living machine, tuned to destruction and chaos, yet tempered by subtle echoes of memory, faint traces of human hands that had built it long before collapse. They approached the main gate. It was enormous, reinforced with twisted steel and vibrational dampers designed to repel sound-based attacks. Aeon plucked a low chord, listening for response. The gate shivered faintly, a tremor that hinted at hidden defenses. Darren strummed a counterpoint, the vibration pressing back against the Bastion's pulse. Zira adjusted her implants, mapping the gate's resonant nodes. "Not much room for error," Darren muttered. "One wrong tone and it'll lock down completely or worse." Aeon nodded, placing his hand lightly on the strings. He felt the Bastion's pulse, tentative and probing, like a massive predator testing his heartbeat. He strummed carefully, each note calculated, bending slightly to avoid triggering defensive harmonics. The gate vibrated in response, metal twisting and sighing, then slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to open. Inside, the Bastion was a labyrinth of corridors and chambers, each vibrating with residual frequencies. Floors hummed faintly underfoot, walls thrummed, and the ceiling seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the structure itself. Aeon realized this was not merely a fortress. It was a machine designed to teach, test, and punish intruders using sound itself as weapon. They advanced cautiously. Every step, every note, every breath was measured. Rogue drones lurked in shadowed corridors, circuits sparking with destructive energy. Aeon plucked a subtle chord, barely audible, and one drone faltered, then collapsed in a shower of sparks. Darren followed with a counterpoint, stabilizing a ceiling beam that had threatened to collapse. Zira's implants hummed as she guided them through the hidden hazards, revealing safe paths through the labyrinth. In the central chamber, they encountered the Bastion's core, a massive lattice of metal, crystal, and energy, spinning slowly, thrumming with destructive potential. It was the source of the broken signals that had plagued the city, a focal point of collapse itself. Aeon felt the resonance press against his chest, a tidal wave of vibration threatening to overwhelm him. Soloman stepped forward, fingers dancing over his strings. His cords threaded through the chaos, bending the Bastion's pulse slightly, stabilizing the lattice just enough to allow further approach. Darren added his counterharmonics, and Aeon layered microtones, invisible to ordinary ears, but crucial in influencing the core. Zira manipulated hidden frequency nodes with her implants, balancing and counteracting destructive resonances. The Bastion reacted, thrumming violently, beams vibrating, drones activating and flailing. It was a battle of sound and resonance, subtle and lethal. Aeon felt sweat trickle under his mask, fingers cramping, every muscle taut. Yet they pressed on, weaving their instruments into a coordinated symphony of survival. Hours passed in tense harmony. The Bastion shifted and adjusted, challenging them at every turn, yet slowly, imperceptibly, they shaped its chaotic energy, bending it just enough to stabilize the surrounding corridors. The broken signals faltered, trembled, and for the first time in months, Aeon sensed a pattern emerging, an order buried beneath the collapse, revealed by human ingenuity and skill. Finally, the core quivered, a massive pulse resonating through the structure. Aeon strummed a long, low chord, feeling it thread through the lattice. Darren matched it with a heavy counterpoint. Soloman added a delicate, precise melody, and Zira's nodes hummed in harmony. The Bastion's pulse faltered, then slowed, a massive, living machine acknowledging their presence, their mastery, their survival. They stood in the central chamber, chests heaving, guitars still trembling with residual resonance. The Bastion had not been conquered. Its power remained vast, lethal, and adaptive. But they had survived, navigated its trials, and left a subtle mark. Aeon exhaled slowly, fingers brushing strings gently. Somewhere in the city, survivors would feel the shift, pathways through broken signals opening subtly, guided by the fragile harmony they had created. Darren lowered his guitar. We've made it through, but the Bastion isn't done with us. It never will be. We've only survived this round. Aeon nodded. It's a reminder, he said softly, that even in chaos, humans can influence the world. That even in the collapse, there's a way forward, if we listen, if we play, and if we endure. Outside, the bruised sky darkened further. The city trembled faintly, a living instrument, waiting, and in the heart of it all, the Bastion's broken signals pulsed like a challenge, a warning and a promise, echoing across the ruins, awaiting the next players. Chapter 8. Echoes of the Collapse. The city's ruins hummed with memory. Every cracked street, every leaning building, every shattered window seemed to whisper in a language of vibration, a dialect only the Fretwalkers could translate. Aeon Marr moved carefully through the remains of what had once been a bustling district, guitar in hand, fingers brushing strings to sense the subtle pulses beneath his feet. The collapse was not finished. It never truly was. Every echo, every lingering resonance, carried danger and possibility. Darren Voss followed close behind, instruments slung like armor, scanning the streets for hidden threats. His eyes flicked constantly to the horizon, alert for rogue drones and unstable structures. Zira Tenbris moved ahead, her implants flickering like ghostly lanterns, decoding the subtle shifts in frequency, predicting the collapse of streets and buildings before it happened. Soloman Rhoke's presence was felt more than seen, his silent influence threading through the group like a stabilizing pulse. Though he did not speak often, his guitar hummed with precise, deliberate microtones that anchored the team, a subtle counterbalance to the city's violent oscillations. The echoes of the collapse were everywhere. Walls vibrated with dangerous harmonics. Unstable beams trembled, and the faint, high-pitched whine of damaged drones cut intermittently through the ruins. Aeon plucked a low chord, letting the vibration travel through cracked asphalt and rubble. The city responded, faintly stabilizing under his touch. Darren added a heavy counterpoint, reinforcing the fragile equilibrium. Zira paused a corner, scanning a collapsed alley. "There's something ahead," she murmured. Her voice was low, tense, barely audible over the faint pulse of city. A convergence of frequencies. I've never seen anything like it. It's feeding the collapse. Aeon's heart tightened. They had faced drones, the Silent Zone, and even the Bastion, but something new was emerging. Something adaptive, alive, and unpredictable. "We move carefully," he said. "Every note counts. Every misstep could be fatal." They approached the convergence slowly, instruments ready. Aeon's guitar hummed in response to the chaotic harmonics in the air. Darren matched him, sending counter-resonance through the street, stabilizing structures long enough to allow passage. Zira manipulated hidden nodes, guiding them through micro-pathways invisible to ordinary perception. The source of the convergence revealed itself. A building at the center of the block, its skeletal frame vibrating violently, walls groaning under destructive harmonics. Drones swarmed around it, their circuits sparking in chaotic patterns. The collapse had concentrated here, feeding off both the building and the surrounding frequencies. "Everyone ready?" Darren asked, voice low and steady. Aeon nodded. "We go together, not one step alone." The team advanced. Aeon plucked a series of chords, bending them carefully to thread through the chaotic vibrations. Darren added heavy counterpoints, reinforcing the fragile stability. Solomon's microtones threaded subtly beneath, weaving an invisible net of resonance that anchored the team and the surrounding structures. Zira guided the pathway, adjusting frequency nodes, predicting every tremor and shift. The building convulsed violently as they approached, floors groaning, walls vibrating dangerously, drones screaming in erratic pulses. Aeon felt the city itself resist their presence, testing them, punishing them for every miscalculation. Yet, step by step, note by note, they advanced, stabilizing what could be stabilized, neutralizing rogue frequencies, and guiding survivors who emerged from hiding along the way. Hours passed in tense coordination. Aeon's muscles burned, fingers cramped. Every chord measured against both instinct and calculation. Darren's heavy harmonics countered destructive pulses. Solomon's precise microtones anchored the fragile balance, and Zira's implants hummed in near-constant adjustment. Finally, at the building's core, the team reached a junction of converging frequencies, a nexus feeding the collapse across the surrounding blocks. Aeon plucked a long, low cord, threading it into the structure. Darren reinforced with heavy counterpoints. Soloman added delicate, precise microtones, and Zira adjusted the frequency nodes to create a fragile harmony. The building shuddered, but then, gradually, it stabilized. The drones fell inert or scattered harmlessly, repelled by the coordinated resonance. The surrounding streets ceased trembling violently. For the first time in weeks, the team could breathe. Aeon lowered his guitar slightly, chest heaving. "It's not over," he said quietly. "The collapse is adaptive. It learns, but we've found a way to guide it, even if only temporarily." Darren exhaled slowly. "We leave marks behind, paths for others to follow, signals that the city listens to. That's all we can do." Soloman nodded, adjusting his strings, a faint melody threading through the air. "Mercy and vigilance," he murmured, voice low. "Every chord, every note must carry both. Otherwise, survival is meaningless." As the bruised sky darkened, faint echoes of their actions lingered in the streets. The collapse was still present, still powerful, but human ingenuity, music, and careful resonance had carved fragile pathways through chaos. The Fretwalkers had left their mark, small but vital, in the city's living, breathing architecture. And somewhere, deep in the ruins, Aeon felt the pulse of another Fretwalker, unseen yet present, threading their own harmonics into the city. Soloman Rhoke's influence, distant but tangible, had begun to ripple through the urban landscape, a reminder that even in collapse, connection, guidance, and hope endured. Chapter 9. Transmission and Resolution. The city had grown quiet in a way that was both unnatural and profound. The collapse, once an unrelenting cacophony of vibrating structures, rogue drones, and fractured frequencies, now seemed to breathe with pauses, moments of fragile stillness. Aeon Marr stood atop a crumbling rooftop, guitar in hand, scanning the horizon. The ruins stretched endlessly, skeletal towers and leaning streets trembling faintly with the city's latent memory. Darren Voss adjusted his straps, guitar across his back, eyes tracing the subtle shifts in the streets below. Zira Tenbris stood nearby, her implants flickering faintly as she tuned the city's residual harmonics into a readable signal. Soloman Rhoke had returned to them, his calm presence anchoring the team. His guitar strings thrummed softly, threads of microtones resonating through the air. "We need to send a transmission," Zira said quietly, voice tight with urgency. "Something that will reach beyond the collapse, beyond the city. Others need to hear this, need to know a path exists." Aeon nodded, fingers brushing the strings of his guitar thoughtfully. "Then we broadcast, not just a signal, but a resonance, a message encoded in the language of survival." They descended into the heart of the city, moving carefully through streets still trembling with residual frequencies. The Bastion's influence lingered, threads of broken signals snaking through ruins, waiting for a disturbance. Aeon plucked a cord, bending it slightly, testing the environment. The sound pulsed faintly through the ruins, threads of harmony reinforcing fragile stability. At the central square, the team set up a makeshift broadcast system, jury-rigging old transmission towers with scavenged electronics, amplifiers, and resonant nodes. Zira calibrated the equipment, converting microtones, counterpoints, and harmonics into a signal capable of reaching distant survivors. Soloman tuned his strings, producing precise frequencies that layered over Aeon's chords and Darren's heavy counterpoints. Aeon exhaled slowly. "Everyone ready?" Darren nodded, fingers poised. "We go together. One resonance, one message, one survival thread." The transmission began. Aeon strummed a low, trembling chord, threading it through the makeshift tower. Darren added heavy counterpoints, shaping the energy into a powerful yet controlled wave. Solomon's microtones wove delicate harmonics into the signal, guiding it with precision. Zira manipulated the frequencies, ensuring that the resonance carried far beyond the city, past the ruins, into territory still untouched by the collapse. The signal pulsed outward, a living broadcast. It carried more than coordinates or instructions. It carried hope, guidance, and resonance. The city responded subtly, the streets stabilizing, the building's vibrations aligning with the signal, as though the ruins themselves had become part of the transmission. Aeon felt a shiver travel up his spine. Somewhere, far away, survivors would hear it, sense it, feel its subtle guidance in the tremors beneath their feet. They would know paths of stability, safe corridors to the fractured world, and that they were not alone. The team worked tirelessly, layering the transmission with precision, improvisation, and intuition. Hours passed as the night deepened, the bruised sky above mirroring the fragile pulse of the world below. The broadcast was not just a signal. It was a lifeline, a living artifact of human ingenuity and resilience. Finally, the city seemed to pause, holding its breath. Aeon strummed a final chord, a long, trembling note that threaded through the ruins, then faded into silence. The transmission was complete. Darren exhaled, voice low. It's out there now. Others will hear it. Others will follow. Solomon nodded, eyes closing briefly. Mercy, guidance, endurance. That's what we leave behind. Not destruction, not domination, but pathways, fragile and enduring. Zira adjusted her implants, scanning the residual harmonics. It worked. The city, it's listening. And so are they. Others will come, guided by this resonance. Aeon looked out over the ruins, feeling the faint pulse of life threading through the city. The collapse was not over. It would never truly be over. But the Fretwalkers had carved a thread through chaos, leaving a path for humanity to follow, a song to guide them. He lifted his guitar once more, strumming a delicate chord that reverberated across the ruins, a personal farewell, a reminder that music and resonance were the language of survival. Around him, Darren, Solomon, and Zira echoed the tone, creating a fragile harmony that carried into the night. And somewhere, far beyond the city, the signal would reach, guiding those who were listening, who were ready to play, who were ready to survive. The Fretwalkers' message was clear. The world had fallen. The collapse had claimed much, but had not claimed the will to endure. And in the tremors and the vibrations, in the echoes that would travel far beyond the ruins, hope survived. Epilogue. Recovered Bastion transmission. The recording was found decades later, buried beneath rubble in what had once been the central square. The Bastion had fallen silent long before any survivors discovered its remnants, leaving behind fragments of data, sporadic echoes, and one continuous transmission. Whoever, or whatever, had recorded had done so with care, preserving not only frequencies and vibrations, but a message woven in resilience. The transmission began with a low hum, a subtle chord threading through static. Then a voice emerged, faint but unmistakable, carrying the cadence of someone who had lived through the collapse and survived not through force, but through listening, understanding, and harmony. This is Aeon Marr. To anyone receiving this, the world has changed. The collapse is not ended, nor will it end in our lifetime. But even here, amid ruins, there are threads of stability, pathways of survival. Music, resonance, and careful observation can guide you. Listen, and the world will respond. The signal shifted, layering harmonics that could not be captured in words alone. Each note was deliberate, precise, yet imperfect. The signature of humanity reaching out to itself through the broken city. Darren Voss, Zira Tenbris, Soloman Rhoke, and we carved paths through chaos. The Bastion, the silence engine, the zones of sonic silence. All are still here. All are dangerous. But we learn to thread through them, to leave marks for others. This is not a map of streets. but a map of resonance. Feel it, sense it, survive. A series of microtones, untranslatable to ordinary ears, pulse through the recording, stabilizing and guiding. Whoever listened closely could perceive shifts in rhythm that align with subtle vibrations in the ruins themselves. Do not attempt to control the collapse. Do not fight it with force alone. Influence it, guide it, respect it. The world is listening, and so must you. This transmission carries our message, our hope, our knowledge. Let it be a thread for those who follow. The recording continued, interspersed with faint echoes of guitars, Aeon's chords, Darren's counterpoints, Solomon's microtones, woven into a resonance that seemed alive even through decades of decay. We leave you with this. Survival is not simply enduring. It is understanding. It is listening, responding, and acting with precision and care. The collapse will continue, but so will those who listen. We were the Fretwalkers. You may be the next. The final notes lingered, fading slowly into static. A faint hum remained, like the heartbeat of the ruins, a subtle vibration threading through the rubble, carrying guidance for anyone attuned to the world's frequencies. The Bastion's walls, now crumbled, seemed to vibrate in acknowledgement of the message. The transmission ended. The silence that followed was profound, yet no longer oppressive. It was a silence filled with potential, a promise carried on the invisible threads of resonance, waiting for the next ears, the next hands, the next hearts to play their part. Somewhere, far beyond the ruins, the echoes of the Fretwalkers live on. End transmission.